Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. This is part 2 of our interview with co-founder and chief marketing officer of Lux AI, Aida.
Sometimes we need something or we have a problem, and for example, we are not so clear about what to do with that. But then when we go back to the resources from London Business School, we learn that they already taught us about this problem. They already discussed about this problem, but in that time, we are not ready to understand what is the application of what they are teaching to us.
I wanted to ask you, when you think about the future of this space, I mean, it seems like this, the QT robot that you've got here is got to have so many applications. I mean, you're making such progress in the autism, but it seems like for entertainment purposes or other applications, it seems like it would be interesting as well. Have you thought of, are there other areas that are kind of interest that you've been working on?
Yeah, basically like how we see QT is as a platform, rather than a robot which is specifically built for one domain. So how we see it is that exactly as the way that you have like personal computers, and then after that everybody is using this computer for a different purpose. Somebody studies with that, somebody work with that. I think like the robot in general, the social robots have the same concept. So basically their use case is not really limited to one particular thing, but they are platforms that they can be adjusted to different scenarios. So what we have done so far, besides using QT for children with autism, is that we have also used it for children with other type of developmental disorders, in a sense that we had children with Down syndrome, we had children with CP, and also other kind of like learning difficulties that they equally benefit from the robot, as well as we have also done some pilots in geriatric medicine and elderly care. So we used the robot for post-stroke rehabilitation and also for cognitive therapy for old people who are more prone to having, for example, like dementia and Alzheimer, and the robot is going to stimulate their memories to have like more interactive works during the day, and hopefully either reduce the speed or postpone this kind of like medical situations.
Yeah. Well, besides being co-founder, you're listed as the CMO, and I just realized that might be Chief Medical Officer instead of Chief Marketing Officer. Which CMO is that supposed to be?
Actually, I'm doing the both, so both of them make sense, yeah.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about the marketing for a minute. You've got something that the market is really responding well to with this social robot. And again, if anybody hasn't been to the website, it's luxai.com. But when you think about growing the organization and expanding the appetite, people who want to purchase it, what are kind of the main strategies that you're pursuing?
For us, the most important thing is that like when you have a product which is extremely new and there is not a lot of like experience in the market on that, basically like the first marketing approach is actually try to educate people about what are the added values of such a solution and how it can impact the way that they are working. So it's more than like doing a marketing, it's I see it as like a communication to actually be able to articulate what are the added values and what people should expect from it, because when you have a product in the market that people already have some experience with a similar product, the marketing would be easier because you can somehow compare it with the existing solution and say it's basically similar thing, but it does this better, faster, or cheaper. But then in our case, it's more about like educating the market about the added values of the robot. And we think that if we can articulate it properly and if we can really like show them these added values, then the marketing would be easy, because actually it's a big problem, We are talking about some kind of a disorder which affects like 1 in 59 children. And now I think like a lot of people are really aware about what is autism, and what is the impact of, like, for example, not giving proper therapies and proper equipments to the children in the future of the whole world. And I think it's more about like being able to communicate it with people, and you already see that the demand and the awareness about like the whole thing is already there. So you have to show them that, okay, we can actually help them to improve the situation.
You know, we named our company myelin after the myelin sheath in the brain. And, you know, a lot of our work, our corporate training and consulting work is about helping folks do enough meaningful repetitions to actually have skill acquisition, you know, and usually it's, you know, CEOs or, you know, we train a lot of folks in special operations in the military or salespeople or different folks. What's interesting to me is just knowing the mothers of autistic children. I can see how something like this would have such an advantage of, you know, dad's at work, mom has so much to do, and having the kid have all those extra hours of social interaction and like the chance to grow more myelin, you know, for that further skill acquisition. It almost feels like a real duplication of efforts of helping the kids get more and more meaningful repetitions. Am I thinking about it right, or is there a different application?
Yes. Basically, like, you know, autism is not something that just affects the child, but how I feel is that it really like affects the whole family, and as a consequence, like the whole society, you know, because, you know, like the people who have children, they already know that how difficult it is to actually like take care of everything about children. But of course, when you have a child which needs extra effort, extra attention, you know, all of these extra hours, it makes it really difficult for the parents. And about autism, there is something in particular that, you know, we do not have enough capacities in the healthcare system to actually support all of these children. You know, the best practices in autism therapy tells us that the children, if we want to really make a difference in their life, they need 30 to 40 hours of therapy per week, which is equal to having like one therapist per child.
Yeah.
And then imagine that the parents want to do the best for their children, but they cannot have access to all the necessary therapies that the children need. So it makes like a very sad impact on them, that they are trying their best to help their children, but they don't know where to start, where to go. And of course, financially, it's like a big burden to be able to afford all of these therapy hours. So the situation for the families are usually like very complicated, and it really like affect how they live their life, and then how they can actually handle the other topics in their life, basically.
Well, and the form factor that you guys have picked, we talked in the first episode about, you know, how it looks and feels like a toy, and it's very kind of magnetic because it does have this emotional response. Like one of our friends that we're really close to, she's a single mom, and she's at work all day, and, you know, the people who are taking care of her son probably are not as invested in his interest as she is. Probably nobody is, right? But
of course.
But if those caretakers had one of these QT robots, you know, that could be all those additional hours while she's at work, right?
Yes, basically, like how we see that QT can be effective is that QT is programmable basically by everyone. So our major effort on building the robot was to actually make it so easy to program that non-IT experts, for example, like doctors, therapists, educators, can actually create content on the robot. And then by having this standard content on the robot, the replication of these sessions would be very easy, you know? So then you can actually like improve the access for the children, which means they would have like more therapy hours. And then as a result of these more therapy hours, they can improve faster in the way that they actually like do their communication, and like it really impacts their social behaviors. But in the same time, we already know, based on the research that we have done in the University of Luxembourg, that the robot also improves the engagement and attention of the children, which translates to learning more in every single session. So we can increase the number of the sessions by having the robot, and also we can improve the quality of each session, which all in all, we hope that it will contribute in improving the situation of the children faster. So like the parents and the therapists can see like much better results in a shorter time, which hopefully can lead them to better follow-ups with the children.
I love it. It's got to be such a fun business to build, to feel like you're making people's lives better.
And we hope that we hope that we can actually like make it happen in a sense that having a robot is becoming like very easy for every parent and every therapist, and it becomes so accessible and affordable that people can really have it and then use it and then hopefully have benefits from using it.
No kidding. Well, let's take a quick break from our sponsor, and then I want to ask you some more about the London Business School. So just before the break, I was saying that I wanted to hear more about the London Business School. It seems like you have really a value in learning from other people's experiences and networking and hearing from mentors. Can you talk about maybe an experience or a mentor you learned from at the business school that really changed your perspective, or that you feel like you've relied on their advice a lot as time has gone on?
So all in all, it was like a very great experience for us, and it's really funny because like now sometimes we need something or we have a problem, and for example we are not so clear about what to do with that, but then when we go back to the resources from London Business School, we learn that they already taught us about this problem, they already discussed about this problem, but in that time we are not ready to understand what is the application of what they are teaching to us. So I see it as a very comprehensive course. But in the same time, their approach is really interesting, especially when it comes to the earlier stages of a startup company. They have a very nice approach to actually understand what kind of business models are viable and what are not, and basically like why this happens. So they have a very good analytic tools that you can use to actually understand what is the biggest barriers for you to actually access the market. What are the barriers that, for example, you will have in development of your solution?
Yeah, do you remember any of those? Do you remember any of those when you were going through? Oh, I'd love to hear specifics.
Yes. So we were having like a very clear approach on analyzing like different business ideas to actually understand, for example, when you want to implement a new technology or a solution or anything in a new market, what would be probably the barriers that you have to deal with them? And then when you can actually like create a list of these barriers and create a list of these probable problems that you will have in the future, it really like supports you to allocate your resources in a way that you can de-risk your business, because at the end of the day, every startup is risky, but it's really important to be able to know what are your risks and how you can address them in order to de-risk the project and the company to actually make it, for example, interesting for example, like external investors who want to come to the company. And also, for example, like in terms of like competitive advantages, a lot of times it's not clear for all the businesses that what exactly is their competitive advantage and how they can actually use this competitive advantage to gain better visibility in the market and better, actually bigger chunk of the market. And this kind of approach to analyze the project really actually help, especially at the beginning, because at the beginning it's very different because you have like an idea and you don't have any kind of like market validation on top of it. So being able to step by step analyze it and also go through a very deep market research even before starting the company or the development itself, it really clears your mind and supports you to actually know what you should expect and what you should like somehow like prepare yourself for.
Yeah. Do you remember any of the things you wrote on your list?
Yeah, for example, like from the beginning, we knew that we are working in the for example, like education and somehow like healthcare medical world. So it's clear that, for example, in this world, you know that one of the first barriers is that this is like a very well structured market and environment. So putting a product in these markets and convincing people to actually get out of this very well structured manner of working and adapting like a totally new approach, it would be a barrier, and it would not be like as fast as you see in a lot of like other companies which are doing something related to entertainment or other type of markets. But in the same time, it's also valuable because when it's difficult to actually enter to a market, it's difficult for all the companies. So if you be able to actually go to the market and get a market share, it already puts you ahead of a lot of, it puts you a little bit beyond the reach of the competitors, because the market entry is difficult for everybody. And somebody who is already in the market and past these barriers have like a way better future comparing to the people who are actually dealing with the barriers.
Yeah. So thinking about that, a mature market that obviously has a lot of regulatory issues, or a highly regulated and mature market. What were some of the strategies? What did you guys, once you're recognizing it and you're thinking more about that, or what advice do you have for the rest of us if we were looking at a mature market that's highly regulated?
So, for example, like in our case, the approach that we thought it's very important, not only because the market is regulated and you have a lot of, like a standardization and everything, but also to actually motivate people to know the added values of the robot, was to have like a very robust scientific approach to it. When you want to promote something as in the market of the healthcare, you have to be able to prove by doing research that the solution is effective. To sell something to hospitals and centers for children, you cannot just claim. You have to be able to show it, that, okay, we have done this study and this is the result and this is the impact that it's going to have. They expect you to have this kind of like validations. And in the healthcare market, it doesn't work with just claims, but you have to actually show them a scientific proof that what you are doing is the result of a lot of experience, and now you're confident that it's going to be effective. And we think that this approach really helped us a lot, not only to actually like convince the healthcare professionals about the robot, but also we thought this is our responsibility, because we are thinking about like the impact of the robot. So for us, it's not just about like commercialization of the robot, but we want to commercialize something that we are confident that this is not just about like a business, but it's about like changing something and making a difference. So I think like having this some kind of a more scientific approach to it really make a difference for us.
Yeah. So what form did that take? This scientific approach and showing them the proof. Is this white papers? Is it reports? Is it videos? What did that look like for you guys?
Basically, it includes everything. So one of the very important things is to actually be able to publish some results from like the scientific experiments which has been done by the robot, which is really valuable. But in the same time, I really believe that the market of the healthcare and education is really built on the trust of some kind of like a peer-to-peer recommendation. So also one of the things that we did beside the experiments in the University of Luxembourg was to actually try to create like case studies and reports and collect a lot of data from the autism centers which are working with the robot, to actually show the end users that not only it works in a scientific manner, but your peers and your colleagues also found it effective. So it's not just related to some scientific study which cannot be, for example, exactly replicated in every autism centers, but the peers and the users really find added value in using such a solution. So for us, it includes like scientific studies, clinical trials, as well as case studies in the real autism centers. and also showing videos and interaction of the children to the other people, because when they see the interaction of the children, they really easily can analyze this interaction, and they can really see what the robot has done for the child.
I love it. Well, as we wrap up here, is there what's one thing you'd like to end with? Is there something you're passionate about, or a piece of advice you'd want to give, or something about your project that you'd want to end with here?
So, for me, as I said, like the both side of the whole thing, which one side is like entrepreneurship and one side is actually like development of a totally new solution, is really interesting. And I really like enjoyed these 3 years that I was working on this project. And for me, it's a lot of times I see that people have like very interesting ideas. They have a deep knowledge about the field that they are working with, and they can really have a very interesting and like game-changing idea. But at the end of the day, it's about like daring. So in my opinion, like spending this time and going through all of this, there is no harm on it. So I really think that if somebody has an idea, if somebody has an opportunity, they have to just take it and try it, because you never know. Maybe you start something and it fails in like 6 months, 1 year, but in the same time, it can become successful. And for me, it's all about like having this passion and daring to actually try what you have, because at the end of the day, if you don't try, you never know it's going to be successful or not. Sometimes you have like very crazy ideas like what we have about like building a robot from scratch with the hardware, software, curriculums, applications, and everything. But at the end of the day, when you try, it's worthy of trying. So basically what I want to say is that like when you have an interesting idea, you have to follow it.
I love it. That's a great ending. Thanks for that. Okay, everybody.
Thank you.
luxai.com. Go check out what Aida's built. Thanks again for making time for us, Aida.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about. If you remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. Anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run, and it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.